Hello guys, welcome to Test Step. So today let's discuss about Playwright Test Timeout. The Playwright Test framework provides a range of timeouts. These include the test timeout, expect timeout, global timeout, and several low-level timeouts such as action timeout, navigation timeout, before all and after all timeout, and fixture timeout. So in this video we will discuss a few essential aspects of test timeout. So the default timeout for Playwright test is 30 seconds. That means each test in your project will wait for at least 30 seconds before throwing a timeout error. Now this timeout include time spent by before each and after each hook, while before all and after all hooks do not share with any test, they have a separate timeout. We can override this timeout at config, single test level or multiple test level. It is important to note that even for correctly written script that take more than 30 seconds, you will get a timeout error and your script will be marked as a fail. Now let's understand with the help of an example. So consider after visiting this website playwright.dev, I am waiting for a locator which does not exist. Give some random value and try to click on it. Now see what we got now. So it's waiting for the locator which does not exist. Now you can see test timeout of 30,000 milliseconds. It failed after 30 seconds. Now even if you have correct steps, for example your step 1 is taking 5 seconds, your step 2 is taking 20 seconds, and step 3 is taking 10 seconds. Now the sum is 35 seconds. No matter your steps are correct or wrong, it will fail after 30 seconds. So it has nothing to do whether you are writing a correct test case or a wrong test case. Now you can override or change the default timeout of 30 seconds by updating it at the config level. So let's enable this step which was failing earlier after 30 seconds. Now go to your config file playwright.config.ts. Here type timeout. So use value 120 which is equivalent to 2 minutes. You can also write it like 2 into 60 seconds into 1000 milliseconds. So this is equivalent to 120,000. Now my test will fail after 2 minutes. Earlier it was failing after 30 seconds. Let's run it and test. So I will fast forward the video. You can see now it waited for 120,000 milliseconds, which is 2 minutes, and earlier it failed after 30 seconds. So you can also specify a timeout for a specific test. It will override the global timeout. So for example, if global timeout is 60 seconds, you can set timeout for this particular test using test.set timeout, and here give value 70,000. So now instead of 60 it's 70 for this particular test case. Now we can also use test.slow, which will triple the default timeout. We will discuss that function in more detail later. So now this test will fail after 70 seconds, and if you have other test cases, those will fail after 60 seconds or run for maximum of 60 seconds. Now let's see, we have 60,000 here and 70,000 here. Here you can see it failed after 70,000 milliseconds. Now consider you have multiple test cases and you want to set the timeout for multiple test cases. Then what you can do, you can put this test.set timeout inside your before each. Now this will run for the complete file, and if you want to run it for group of test cases, then you can use describe and a before each for each describe. That's how it will run for group of test cases. So if a set of test cases related to a particular functionality or module have a longer execution time, you can extend it using the before each hook. You can call this before each hook at file level scope and inside describe, which group couple of test cases. Now if you want to get timeout value, you can use test info outside the curly brackets with comma, and now you can print console.log default timeout is plus test info dot timeout. So this will get your default timeout, which is 60 seconds. And after getting the default timeout like test info dot timeout, you can add your own timeout. Like default timeout is, so make sure it's a camel case. So default timeout is 60, then 60 plus 20, total 80 seconds. Now this run will print 60 seconds in console and test will run for 80 seconds. You can see default timeout is 60,000, which is value of this config timeout. Now our test will fail in 80 seconds. You can see 80,000 exceeded. So I am giving example of failed test case because it's really hard to track this timeout for real test case, which will execute fine without any failure. Now let's discuss some important points before we finish. So while increasing or decreasing timeout, be very careful. Decreasing timeout less than the actual script execution time will lead to unnecessary failure. Also, increasing timeout can increase the overall execution time of your script if there are failures. So it is essential to understand your application and implement a timeout strategy accordingly. For example, if out of 100 scripts, 70 scripts are taking approximately 60 seconds, it is better to keep 60 as default timeout in config file. Or if checkout module or file take 100 seconds, it is better to place it in before each of that spec file. You can also group test cases in describe and use timeout in before each for them. Now in a specific test, if it is taking 120 seconds or 150 seconds, it is better not to implement it at default module or group level. Use it for that particular test case. Thank you. I hope you like the video. Do subscribe and support this community.